So let's just get one thing out of the way. You put Shannon Sharpe and Chad Ochocinco-Johnson in a room together, throw in the words Shedeur Sanders and NFL agenda, and what do you get? A firestorm. A full-on talking head detonation. But behind the barbershop banter and viral clips, there was a real tension simmering under the surface, and it all comes down to one question. Is the NFL actually trying to hold Shedeur Sanders back? Or is this just the hard truth of the business? Let's rewind.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
The moment the Cleveland Browns depth chart dropped, Twitter lost its mind. There it was in black and white. Joe Flacco, QB1. Dylan Gabriel, QB2. Shedeur Sanders, QB3. Wait, third string? For Shedeur Sanders? The same guy who broke nil records, turned merch into a movement and carries the primetime DNA? People were quick to cry sabotage. And Shannon Sharpe? He didn't exactly shut that idea down. In fact, he cracked the window open and let that conspiracy breeze drift in. But here's the twist. This wasn't a full-blown tinfoil hat moment. Sharpe didn't say the NFL was twirling its mustache behind closed doors. No shadowy commissioner whispering, keep him quiet. No. What he said and what Chad echoed was way more nuanced and honestly, more dangerous for the league's ego. They argued that bias doesn't always wear a villain cape. Sometimes it looks like standard procedure. Sometimes it sounds like he just needs time. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, behind systems built to keep the new guard waiting until the old guard decides they're ready. But Shedeur? He's not exactly the wait your turn type. The tension, star power versus systems. You've got to understand what makes this situation electric. It's not just about depth charts or preseason snaps. It's about power. It's about image control. And it's about timing. Shedeur is already famous. Not rookie camp viral famous, but builds his own apparel empire before his NFL debut famous. That's disruptive. And let's not pretend the NFL has always loved disruption. The league is a polished machine. It thrives on control, on narrative, on tradition. So when a 22-year-old quarterback walks in with a logo, a lifestyle brand, and more Instagram followers than some teams, yeah, it makes the suit squirm. Shannon Sharpe basically said the quiet part out loud. You don't need to hate someone to slow them down. Sometimes you just need to be uncomfortable with how fast they're moving. The Flacco factor. And then there's Joe Flacco. Super Bowl champ. Veteran leader. Checks every safe box in the league's playbook. No one's saying Flacco doesn't deserve a job. But is he the future? Is he the player fans are begging to see on Sundays? Not exactly. Flacco represents reliability. Shedeur represents risk and reward. Sharpe's point wasn't that Shedeur's being benched just because he's Shedeur. It's that the league tends to treat innovation like a virus, something to be quarantined until it's safe to release. But by the time it's safe, it's often too late to lead the culture. Third string is a narrative. Ochocinco jumped in with his usual flair, but beneath the jokes he said something sharp. Third string ain't about skill. It's about story. Think about that. Because Shedeur isn't just playing for reps, he's playing against perception. And the third string QB label is more than a number on a chart. It's a narrative shortcut. It tells fans he's not ready. He's not that guy. Not yet. But what if he is ready? What if he's just not fitting neatly into the mold the league prefers? The one that waits until year 3 to let you speak, until year 4 to build your brand. What if Shedeur skipped the line? Enter Joe Thomas, voice of reason? Now, on the other side of the table, Browns legend Joe Thomas threw cold water on the whole sabotage theory. His take. Simple. The NFL wants stars. The league thrives on players like Shedeur. If he wins, they win. And you know what? That's not wrong. The NFL is a business. Viewership matters. Merch matters. Hype matters. They need charismatic, marketable stars. But here's where it gets messy. That same business is terrified of stars it doesn't control. And Shedeur? He's already proven he doesn't need the machine to move the needle. So yeah, maybe it's not sabotage. Maybe it's just strategic hesitation. A kind of quiet hand on the brakes, just enough to say, let's see how he handles the grind before we roll out the red carpet. Fair. Debatable. But Sharpe and Chad both made it clear. You can't expect a new era to wait politely for the old one to finish its shift. The reality of NFL rankings. Let's ground this a bit. Depth charts change. Third string in August can turn into starter by October. Every year, quarterbacks climb and crash based on injury, performance, or just plain fate. Shedeur knows that. His camp knows that. This isn't panic mode, it's positioning. But the debate wasn't really about, is Shedeur better than Flacco? It was about the optics of holding back a player who's already captured the cultural imagination. Mentality matters. One of the realest moments in the discussion? Sharpe and Chad both emphasized mindset. That NFL success isn't just about arm strength or film study, it's about preparation under pressure. Sharpe said it best. The league don't care about your logo if you're not ready for the heat. And that's facts. For all the cultural momentum, Shedeur still has to show up. Every rep, every practice, every second-string coverage he's thrown against, it's all data the team is collecting. And when the moment comes, he has to be undeniable. No amount of hype can replace execution. But don't get it twisted, Sharpe and Chad aren't betting against him. They're calling their shot. When Shedeur gets his shot, the league won't be able to contain it. The Calvin Ridley interlude. This conversation wasn't just about Shedeur. It opened the door to a deeper discussion about NFL culture, mental health, and redemption. Calvin Ridley's name came up, and it hit hard. Here's a player who lost time. To injury. To suspension. To personal battles. And yet, he came back better. Stronger. Clear. His story reminded everyone that the NFL doesn't just test your body, it tests your soul. The ones who survive? They don't just grind. They heal. Sharpe and Akasinko dropped some real wisdom here, about therapy, growth, mental reps, about how resilience is a skill just like reading cover 2. And in that light, Shedeur's journey isn't just about playbooks and press conferences. It's about building the mental muscle to survive a league that will absolutely try to break you. The takeaway. So, does the NFL have an agenda to sabotage Shedeur Sanders? Maybe not. But it absolutely has a preference. And right now, Shedeur is pushing every boundary of that preference. Culturally, commercially, and personally. He's not just stepping into a quarterback room. He's stepping into a league that's still learning how to handle players who arrive with their own platforms, their own vision, their own momentum. This isn't sabotage. It's resistance. And resistance always shows up when change walks through the door. Final word. Let's be real. Shedeur Sanders is walking into the NFL like it's already his stage. Not with arrogance, with intent. And while the league might flinch, the fans aren't. They're watching. Waiting. Ready. Because deep down, everybody loves a disruptor. And if Shedeur delivers, not just merch but moments, no depth chart in the world will be able to hold him back. So say what you want about third string. Conspiracies. Narratives. But when talent, timing, and cultural power collide, you better believe the league will have no choice but to follow his lead. The only real question left is, will they catch up in time? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this conversation is just getting started. Alright, let's keep it all the way real. Because if you thought this Shedeur conversation was over after Shannon Sharpe and Akasinko left the table, nah, we're just getting warmed up. You felt that tension in the room, didn't you? That subtle, not so subtle friction between old-school NFL logic and this new-age player power wave. It's not just about Shedeur being QB3, it's what that label represents. See, this debate isn't really about whether Shedeur is ready to start right now. It's about what happens when someone doesn't wait their turn, and does it loud. That's where the discomfort kicks in. The NFL's balancing act. Let's not pretend the NFL doesn't love flashy players. They eat that up as long as they're still playing by the rules. The league's been built on letting stars shine, but only within a system it can manage. Shedeur Sanders? He's not just shining. He's building his own damn solar system. So when Shannon Sharpe throws out the idea that maybe, just maybe, the league isn't quite ready for a player who brings this much attention, this much influence without a single NFL snap, that hits. It hits because we've seen this movie before. We've seen leagues slow play the rise of players who refuse to shrink to fit, who show up with a brand, a voice, a movement, and suddenly it's not about football anymore, it's about visibility, identity, power. And guess what? That makes people nervous. Not because they hate it, but because they don't control it. Third string. Or strategic stall. Let's take a second to unpack this third string label. Because for Shedeur, this isn't just about being behind Joe Flacco and Dillon Gabriel. This is about optics. When you label someone QB3, you're not just managing the depth chart, you're managing perception. You're sending a message to fans, analysts, even brands, this guy isn't ready yet. But hold on. Ready for what exactly? The playbook? The pressure? The politics? Because if we're being honest, Shedeur's already been under a brighter spotlight than most of the league's starters. He's played in front of sold-out stadiums, media frenzies, national coverage, all while being Deion Sanders' son. And still showed up cool, calm, calculated. That's not just pressure, that's legacy pressure. That's walking into every room with the weight of prime time on your shoulders and still having the audacity to carve your own path. So if he's handling that, you really think he can't handle the quarterback room in Cleveland? Please. The politics of development. Let's not sugarcoat it. NFL development isn't always based purely on merit. Sometimes it's about timing, comfort, and control. You've got coaching staffs who don't want to rush a player, front offices managing egos, veterans who've earned their time, and locker rooms that can be sensitive to who gets the spotlight. So what happens when you drop a player into that mix who's already a household name? A player whose jersey is already outselling starters? A player who's more valuable to the brand than some of the team's own assets? You don't think that shakes the room a little? Of course it does. And that's what Shannon Sharpe was hinting at. Not that the league is actively sabotaging Shedeur, but that it's slow-playing his ascension, letting the media narratives do the containment work while pretending it's all about competition. But competition doesn't exist in a vacuum. It lives in meeting rooms, press conferences, marketing meetings, and Instagram timelines. And right now, Shedeur's winning those reps by a mile. The veteran factor. Let's talk Flacco for a second. Joe Flacco is a Super Bowl MVP. He's smart, steady, and reliable. He's also 39 years old. Nobody's mad he's QB1. What's interesting though is how often the league leans on the veteran presence storyline as a shield. As if experience should always outweigh momentum. But we're in a new era now, where veteran presence is valuable, but fan magnetism might be even more valuable. And the Browns? They know exactly what they have on their hands with Shedeur. They know the stadium will get louder the second he puts that helmet on. They know the camera will follow him every time he steps off the bench. So this whole wait your turn routine? It's less about Shedeur needing more time, and more about the league figuring out how to deal with him once he's in the spotlight. Akasinko said it best. When Chad Johnson leaned in and said, "Third string is a temporary label. Stardom is permanent," you could feel that resonate. Because that's what separates Shedeur from your average rookie. He's not waiting to become a star. He already is one. The league's just catching up to the reality. And what happens when they finally have no choice but to elevate him? You already know. That bench will get hot fast. The media frenzy will ignite. And the merch? Oh, the merch will fly again like it's Yeezy Season 1. But more importantly, the conversation will change. Because once Shedeur proves he can ball at the NFL level, and let's be honest, we all believe he will, then the league doesn't just get a quarterback. It gets a movement. And that's a lot scarier to the establishment than any deep post route. The Ridley comparison, a masterclass in resilience. Let's not skip over Calvin Ridley's name being brought into the convo. That wasn't random. Ridley is the perfect example of why NFL narratives are never permanent. Here's a player who was once counted out, mentally, physically, professionally, but he fought through the smoke, found his footing, took his hits and came back stronger. That's what Shedeur's path will require. Not because he's being sabotaged, but because navigating a system that wasn't designed for players like you, that's always going to be harder. It's the invisible work. The practices where no one's watching. The reps you take after the cameras stop rolling. The mental fortitude to believe in your rise, even when the room's not built for you yet. Ridley's return isn't just a feel-good story, it's a blueprint for staying locked in. For turning quiet weeks into game-breaking Sundays. And Shedeur? He's showing signs of being cut from that same cloth. Patience versus passivity. Let's be very clear. No one's saying Shedeur should be QB1 just because he's popular. This ain't a popularity contest. This is the NFL. The hits are real. The schemes are complex. The stakes are sky high. But there's a difference between being patient and being passive. And what Sharpe and Johnson are saying is this. Don't confuse patience with delay tactics. Because if Shedeur's ready, actually ready, the system should make space. Not excuses. Because if it doesn't, if the league waits too long, clings too hard to its old ways, it risks doing what every legacy system fears most. Missing the moment. The future isn't coming, it's here. What makes all of this so dramatic, so rich with tension, is that Shedeur represents something bigger than a QB debate. He's the first athlete of this new wave to walk into the NFL already operating like a Fortune 500 brand. He's not playing for attention. He owns attention. He's not hoping for visibility. He generates visibility. And whether the league wants to admit it or not, That's the future. Players with platforms. Players with purpose. Players with power, before they ever throw a single touchdown. So when Shannon Sharpe said what he said, when Chad Johnson doubled down, they weren't blowing smoke. They were issuing a warning. Adapt, or get left behind. Because what Shedeur Sanders represents isn't just talent. It's transformation. And once that transformation hits the field, no amount of third-string politics will be able to stop what's coming. The league can hold the clipboard for a little while longer. They can ride the comfort of veterans, the predictability of traditional PR cycles, the myth of waiting your turn. But eventually, talent walks in, breaks the huddle, and takes the spotlight. And when Shedeur does that, it won't be a moment. It'll be a shift. A shift that even the NFL can't game plan against. So you better get used to it. Because whether the league's ready or not, Shedeur Sanders is coming. There's something happening in the NFL right now that feels different. And no, it's not just Shedeur Sanders sitting at QB3. It's not just Shannon Sharpe going off on a podcast. It's not even about merch lines or highlight tapes or who's throwing passes in preseason warm-ups. This is about power, control, identity, and the fact that, for the first time in a long time, the machine doesn't seem to know what to do with a player it didn't manufacture. That's the energy Shedeur is walking in with. And that's what Shannon Sharpe and Chad Johnson felt in their bones during that now-viral debate. They weren't just reacting to a quarterback's name on a depth chart. They were responding to a shift. Because when you see a player like Shedeur, who's already built his own fanbase, launched a brand, dominated college football, and come from prime lineage, sitting behind two guys that don't even carry half his cultural weight, yeah, people are going to start asking questions. And Shannon? He asked the loudest. Not because he thinks the NFL is running some shady sabotage operation behind closed doors, but because he knows how this league works. He's lived in those locker rooms. He's sat in those meetings. He's been inside the belly of that machine, and what he sees now feels familiar. A talented young player with a huge platform, an undeniable presence, and the audacity to walk into the league with leverage? That's not a comfy scenario for NFL traditionalists. The league loves stars. That's true. But they like their stars homegrown, groomed, humble, media-coached, and grateful to be here. They like control. And Shedeur? He came in fully built. Not just a player. A brand. A voice. A movement. So when people say, oh, he just has to earn it, of course. Everyone in the league does. No one's handing him a gold jacket because he made nil history or because his dad's the most iconic cornerback of all time. That's not what this is about. What this is about, and what Shannon and Chad were tapping into, is the NFL's inability to adapt in real time. They're watching this cultural hurricane forming and they're trying to put up umbrellas like it's just a drizzle. This isn't rain. This is a storm of relevance. And here's the truth no one wants to say out loud. The league benefits from Shedeur being in the spotlight, but it doesn't want to lose control of the spotlight. It wants his charisma, his reach, his youth appeal, but only on their terms. They want the clicks, not the chaos, the numbers, not the narrative. But Shedeur doesn't just generate buzz, he owns it. He writes the script. He sets the tone. And that's why he makes the establishment nervous. Because once a player doesn't need the league's PR machine to be seen, once he doesn't need pre-game interviews or ESPN features to move culture, he becomes a threat to the traditional system. Not a villain. Not a rebel. Just a reminder that the gatekeepers don't hold all the keys anymore. And that's the part that stings. Because you better believe there are execs, coaches, analysts, maybe even teammates, watching him wondering, why is he getting all this attention when he hasn't even started a game? But here's the kicker. He earned that attention. Not just through viral content or famous bloodlines. Through actual work. Through performance. Through leadership. Through carrying a program on his back, under a national microscope while cameras rolled and critics circled. And through all of it he never folded. He embraced it. Managed it. Mastered it. Which is why being QB3 doesn't really fit anymore. Not in the conventional sense. Because we're not talking about a developmental project here. We're talking about a player who's already commanding a fan base. Not inherited, created. He doesn't need the machine to tell fans he's legit. The fans told the machine. That's what's different. So when Shannon Sharpe raised that eyebrow and asked if maybe, just maybe, there's something deeper at play behind Shedeur's third-string status, people listened. Not because he was screaming. Not because he was throwing shade. But because he knows what it looks like when a league quietly resists a new kind of player. One who doesn't wait to be marketed. One who is the market. Now of course you've got the other side. Guys like Joe Thomas, Browns legend, respected voice, coming out and saying, Come on, this is all normal. The league wants guys like Shedeur to succeed. This is good for business. And he's not wrong. From a business standpoint, Shedeur lighting up the field is a dream for the NFL. A young, charismatic quarterback with legacy credentials and the cultural capital of a rock star? That's gold. But the transition from dream to reality is where the friction lives. Because the NFL wants the finished product, the breakout star. They're not as comfortable with the building phase, especially when it doesn't follow their script. And Shedeur's script? It's already written. So when you drop him into a quarterback room with Joe Flacco, a seasoned vet, and Dillon Gabriel, another young talent, and he lands at QB3, people notice. Not just because of talent, but because of trajectory. This isn't about week 1 starts. It's about momentum. And how the NFL sometimes tries to pause that momentum until it fits into their carefully planned rollout. But Shedeur's rollout? Already happened. He launched a logo, moved merch, and broke the internet before he even walked into training camp. He didn't ask for attention. He demanded excellence and the spotlight followed. That's why fans are frustrated. That's why Shannon spoke up. That's why the internet lit up like a Christmas tree. Because they can see that this isn't just about football. This is about identity. About who gets to rise. About who controls the narrative. And let's be honest, this moment, Shedeur at QB3, isn't permanent. It's temporary. Inevitable. Because when talent meets timing, meets culture, meets preparation, you don't stay benched for long. Everyone knows Shedeur's time is coming. Probably sooner than expected. And when that day hits, when he steps onto that field with the lights on and the world watching, it won't just be a debut. It'll be a statement. That you can build your own brand. Speak your own truth. Move your own audience. And still play at the highest level. That the league doesn't need to make you a star. You can walk in as one. And for the NFL, that changes the game. Because the next generation is watching. High schoolers. College players. Nil kids. Future draft picks. They're seeing how Shedeur moves, and they're taking notes. They're learning that they don't have to wait for a sideline shot on Sunday Night Football to matter. They can matter now. Through story. Through strategy. Through self-belief. And yeah, that might shake the system. But it also evolves it. That's what this whole conversation comes down to. Not sabotage. Not conspiracy. But evolution. The NFL doesn't need to fear Shedeur Sanders. They need to follow his lead. Because what he's building is not just a brand. It's not just buzz. It's a blueprint. And if they don't make space for that, they'll get left behind, watching from the sidelines while the new era kicks off without them. Because the truth is, the league doesn't get to choose what the people care about anymore. The people already chose. And they chose Shedeur. Now the league has 2 options. Catch up, or get run over.